Why do you think that the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi wants these changes? Why do you think that he keeps coming up against you to say, I want this to change?
Well, I think he's got an extreme dislike in Afrikaans and more specifically Afrikaners. And then, of course, Afrikaans schools is collateral damage in the process. Just follow his social media, just look what he says in public. He's not a person that wants to promote social cohesion. For them, it doesn't matter if the school is full. For them, it's an effort to attack Afrikaans. And we had
There's the BELA Bill tug of war that's got everyone on the edge of their seats. President Ramaphosa has found himself in a showdown over the controversial BELA Bill. It's a piece of legislation that sparked heated debates across South Africa. The bill is aimed at altering key aspects of education as we know it. It's seen intense scrutiny and also fierce opposition. Now, he signed the bill into law on Friday, and a lot of people said, don't do it, don't do it. There are two contentious clauses. So he said, okay, I'm going to sign this into law, but I'm going to keep back these two clauses. I'll give 3 months for urgent discussion to happen. If, though, after 3 months, nothing has happened and we're sitting where we're sitting, I am then going to sign off on these two clauses. And this has now caused a little bit of consternation. Well, on the line is AfriForum's Kallie Kriel. Good morning, Kallie. Good to chat to you.
Morning, Ray. Great speaking to you.
Right, so you've had a few, I understand, late-night discussions. It's you, it's also Solidarity as well, and it's been the president. Take us through what's happened.
Yes, well, I think before the election already, AfriForum and Solidarity, as well as the school support organization, sent a letter to the president requesting him to refer the BELA Bill at that stage back to Parliament. Of course, then the election came, and over the last 2 weeks, it was evident that this bill was going to be signed. In a last-ditch effort, I then wrote another letter to the president, telling him that this is not just a problem, another piece of legislation that we could disagree with, because for us, this is a question of survival as a cultural community. And then, of course, on Wednesday, it was clear that the signing was going to go ahead. I, as well as my colleague at Solidarity, Dirk Herman, and Flip Base, had discussions with political parties within the national government of national unity. And then apparently on Wednesday evening, when the leaders of the various parties in the government of national unity spoke to the president, John Steenhuisen then requested this president to speak to us. So then on Thursday, I received my first call from the president. Of course, I didn't have his number, so I thought that was probably a marketing call, so I missed out on that. But then I decided to call back again, and I just said hello, and the person on the other side just said hello. And I asked, who's speaking?
Oh, wow.
And he said, no, it's the president speaking. So, but what was fortunate, although in your introduction you said there's a lot of tension, and that is so, because this is a very, very important issue for us. I think it was great that I could have a discussion for 35 minutes with the president. And telling him why we're against this, and in the end requesting him not to implement these two specific clauses. He said then that he'll have to reflect on it. He later on called my colleague Dirk Herman, which also then we in writing via WhatsApp sent the proposal. And what was great is on Friday morning, an hour before the signing, the president called again. Fortunately, this time I saved his number.
Yeah, good. Good move.
Yeah. So especially on such an important issue. You don't want to miss
Yeah.
a call.
Kallie, just if I can come
If
in there.
your wife calls and the president calls, you better pick up.
You don't mess up
he
on
didn't-
those two. You
No,
don't.
no.
You certainly don't.
So,
What's at the
yes,
heart of this now, Kallie? What's at the heart of this? I mean, of course, there is Afrikaans
Yeah.
that comes into it. This has always been a very contentious issue because of our apartheid legacy, etc. But there's more to it than that, isn't there?
Yes, most definitely. We know that the people like in the Gauteng government and especially the Premier, Mr. Lesufi, are the ones that are driving this the most. But the problem is they are saying that they are fighting for access, which is, of course, the just cause. But it's simply a way to divert the fact that this provincial government has not built all the schools they promised. In fact, they only built a few. So they are the biggest reason for there not being access to quality education. That is the argument on the one side, but it's also a false argument. In my discussions with the president, I also invited him to say we can visit any Afrikaans public school and I won't try to manipulate it. He can choose the school.
Yeah.
And if we visit such a school, you would see it is not exclusive at all. Remember, the majority of Afrikaans-speaking people are so-called color people, but also here in the north. These schools are not exclusive. So that's a false argument. But
Right.
our argument in the positive side is, remember, the Afrikaans-speaking community, unlike most communities in this country, we don't have a traditional leader.
Yeah.
We don't have traditional areas. We don't have initiation schools. And those kind of things are the one that preserves
Yeah.
our cultural diversity. So for
Yeah.
us, the only place where our culture can survive is in Afrikaans schools. So this is threatening our survival. And that is a serious issue regarding this.
No, absolutely. I mean, Kallie, Afrikaans is embedded in the culture and the heritage of South Africa. Looking at those schools, is there room to maneuver? And the other contentious part of the clause, or the bill rather, is that school numbers. So you have a school that operates at, say, 800 school pupils. That's the capacity. Now this bill wants to make it, say, 1,600. But looking at some of those schools, is there some sort of room to maneuver?
Well, what we've seen, remember, if a school is not full, you can have no argument about retaining the Afrikaans status. So what we've seen in various places is where schools have amalgamated. We've seen that in Kroonstad. We've seen that in the Vaal Triangle happening, and then making sure that access is being granted. But the problem is people driven by ideology. For them, it doesn't matter if the school is full. For them, it's an effort to attack Afrikaans. And we had many court cases. In Oeverval, for instance, the Gauteng government took on the school. We supported the school legally, and the court found that there's no justification to target the school if that school is full and there is an ample place in nearby English-speaking schools. So we want to get the ideology out of this, the effort to take on Afrikaans, and we want to get a solution that is in the interest of all children, so that we can make a situation where children have access. The problem is also Afrikaans schools are only 5% of schools in the country.
Right.
But we know 80% of schools are that dysfunctional, which is a tragedy. That will perpetuate inequalities forever if we don't address that. And you're not going to fix the 80% by destroying the 5%.
Sure. If I can come in there, why do you think that the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi wants these changes? Why do you think that he keeps coming up against you to say, I want this to change?
Well, I think he's got an extreme dislike in Afrikaans, and more specifically Afrikaners. And then, of course, Afrikaans schools is collateral damage in the process. And I know this sounds very, very overestimated, but just follow his social media. Just look what he says in public. He's not a person that wants to promote social cohesion. We want to do that. Unfortunately, we now have an opportunity, a last-ditch effort, to make sure that we build a society where there is social cohesion.
All right, we do extend right to reply to the Gauteng Premier to speak to us on 7:02 about that. What happens in 3 months' time? 3 months' time, if there's no agreement, is it going to court? What happens next?
Yes, well, we have, this is not a threat because we've said this from the start that we are ready to go to court. Our legal team is ready, as well as that of Solidarity and the School Support Center. I know that there are also other role players that are ready to go to court. But of course, we just put that on hold for this 3 months and see, because it's always better to try and get a solution through discussions rather than through court cases. Then what I also think is important, the various parties in the Government of National Unity that are against this, what is now an act, or these clauses, of course, it might be a situation where they all make their own proposals. And our view is that there should be a consolidated proposal, and we will enter into discussions with all the parties. Of course, there's a process of organizing a meeting between ourselves as the broader Solidarity movement and also the ANC, because I think broader discussions is needed. I think the country is in trouble. We all need to make a contribution. We can help and assist in municipalities, in various other areas. And that is it's now time for cooperation and not polarization.
Yeah. I'm loving the fact that he phoned you. I'm loving the fact that you are talking with the president. This is a whole new era, isn't it? Because go 5 years ago, that never would have happened.
No, we've tried, of course, to engage with government. But remember, we are a watchdog organization. And if you're a watchdog organization, you're not on everybody's Christmas card list. So sometimes you have to take on issues, but we are not strategically in a fighting mode. We don't wake up in the morning and say, who are we going to fight against today?
Yeah.
I think it's only with regard to certain issues. But what has now happened since the election, doors have opened. And to give you an example, I never thought in my life that I would go into a meeting and that the meeting would be constructive with a minister that's from the PIC.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
We met with the minister in Yonsu the other day, and to find out how we can assist traditional communities to make sure that the land is used optimally.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole that's a whole nother thing. AfriForum's Kallie Kriel. Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
And guys. So AfriForum is taking this issue with the BELA Bill really heads on. I mean, like, it seems that the AfriForum has actually been at the forefront of a resistance and a rejection of this bill ever since its inception in Parliament. And so this analysis here will really try to really understand the perspective from AfriForum, from the perspective of the Afrikaans, why the BELA Bill seems to be a problem, why it's really raising a lot of dust in the air, and why it appears that while one part of South Africa really applauds the BELA Bill, the other really rejects it and is really pushing for legal action that might drag the GNU, and drag its feet for a long time. So anyway, this was a report from the AfriForum, website itself. It actually argues that from the perspective of AfriForum, it's actually seeking to proceed legal steps, as the president now signs the BELA Bill. The perspective is the fact that AfriForum views the BELA Bill as an attempt at cultural ethnic cleansing by the ANC government, all right? As the implementation of the bill, the BELA Bill will enable the destruction of a linguistic and cultural community, schools, thereby jeopardizing the group's cultural existence. You see, so the Afrikaans, like you heard in the video, this video now, that it appears that the BELA Bill seems to be an attack on Afrikaans. Okay, so this is what AfriForum see. They see it as an attack it is a way the BELA Bill seeks to destroy linguistic and cultural community schools, okay, and jeopardize the existence of that group in South Africa. So because of that, AfriForum's legal team now says that it is ready to take steps against President Ramaphosa as soon as the implementation of this bill goes forward. And it says that AfriForum has made its announcement, in a media conference, that since the first draft of the bill appeared in 2017, AfriForum had been steadfast in objecting to the articles in which amends the right of governing bodies to have a final say about schools admissions and language policy. So I think this is really where the problem lies in those, especially like from the perspective of the DA and other parties that are against the bill. That actually this fact that the bill will have power over the right of governing bodies, okay, to have a final say about schools admissions and language policies. Now, according to Alana Bailey, who is the head of cultural affairs of AfriForum, she says that over the years, thousands of members of AfriForum and the wider public have pledged their support to AfriForum's opposition to this bill. And she says that there was a continuous participation in all public consultation events at provincial and national level, all right? And the more the information about the BELA Bill became known, the more the opposition on it escalated. So therefore, it is extremely disappointing. This is from AfriForum's perspective. AfriForum thinks that it's disappointing that the president plans to really continue to push this bill, especially now that it's been signed, but now there's a 3-month interval to really negotiate for clause 4 and 5 in that regard. So AfriForum feels that it's an aggressive act, especially this is now Bailey speaking. She says that it's an aggressive act of contempt for public opinion that transforms the government of national unity into a government of national disunity. So really interesting words. So she speaks about the AfriForum actually have this also perspective that Afrikaans schools nationwide are under pressure from provincial officers, okay, provincial officials to offer English instruction. So you see, this is where the problem lies. So you guys will be the one to really help us understand here. But, it appears that, South Africa now has these Afrikaans schools, which offer education, I think, predominantly in Afrikaans. Now, it appears that there's pressure, and this pressure will be heightened by the BELA Bill, to have these schools offer education in English. And that really doesn't go well with the Afrikaners, because they think that it's an attack on their cultural legitimacy and existence in South Africa. But anyway, it now says that now that the provincial heads of education will have the right to take final decisions about schools, language, and admission policies, the door is open to change single medium Afrikaans schools to dual or parallel medium schools. And the inevitable end, this is from AfriForum's perspective now, it says that the inevitable end of this process will be that the schools will become a single medium English instruction. So in other words, AfriForum is worried. AfriForum is worried that, the BELA Bill opens the door to change what has been a single medium Afrikaans schools to a dual or parallel medium school. So in other words, it appears that some of the public schools in South Africa, which offer education strictly in Afrikaans, will now have to open their windows to have opportunity to study in Afrikaans or in English, or even totally in English, and they see that that's a really big threat to the Afrikaans community and those who have their children being educated in Afrikaans, okay? So Bailey also mentions that despite the declarations of support that the Department of Basic Education has recently made about the value of mother language education in South Africa, it is a right that is increasingly being denied to Afrikaans speaking learners, okay? And it says that Afrikaans has already been eroded in the country's public education system in a similar way, and the shrinking number of schools that still use Afrikaans as a language of instruction is now the target. And now AfriForum is preparing to, both for national and international legal action to oppose. So this is the perspective of Afrikaans. AfriForum. AfriForum sees this bill as they're coming from the perspective of the protection of the Afrikaans community, and a tradition that education has actually been offered in Afrikaans for many of the members of the Afrikaans community. And this would be a really threat. This would be a target it would really be difficult to have the Afrikaans community really think of alternatives in the short run, and what to do if suddenly the schools that their children attend slowly now would be demanded to slowly start switching instructions to English, and then having that whole tradition that seems to have existed in South Africa for a long time eroded. And so this is what I'm beginning to hear from the perspective of AfriForum, from the perspective of those who do not support this BELA bill, and probably it makes sense why proponents of the ANC and other groups in South Africa see the bill as a kind of like a vehicle for inclusivity in education. So one other article, I think it's really interesting to help us understand. It says that the reasons why AfriForum is not satisfied, this is also AfriForum is not satisfied with the changes in the bill, is that this bill argues that the provincial heads of education will have the final say on language and admission policies. We know that. It says that the consultation between the officials and government bodies that will take place is quite meaningless, because it says that AfriForum saw how members of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Basic Education had to be forced to take all the public input into account a few months ago. And it says that consultation is often used as a window dressing to create the illusion that public opinion is being taken into account while the ANC forges ahead on its ideological path. So this is the perspective from the AfriForum now. It says that sometimes it's also a bullying process. So AfriForum sees this whole thing with consultation as a bullying process to force the staff and the governing bodies to convert single medium African schools to parallel or dual medium schools. Okay. And so AfriForum also argues that these successful single medium African schools constantly report to AfriForum that they are under continuous pressure from officials to accept learners who want English instruction. Okay, and Bailey mentions that she's not aware of any single medium English school that experienced the same pressure to accommodate Afrikaans tuition. So you see, AfriForum is trying to fight for a balance. It appears that most of the schools, the public schools which offer education in Afrikaans language, using Afrikaans language as a language of instruction, have been under pressure. It appears like sort of like a linguistic colonialism of English language, okay? That's now kind of like being pushed through the BELA bill. This is now from the perspective of AfriForum, to have this Afrikaans, single medium Afrikaans providing public education schools to now slowly start creating new policies that accommodate English language learners. But AfriForum is not happy, because they expect that the same pressure should also be applied to schools, single medium schools which offer education in English, to also open their doors for learners in Afrikaans education. And so AfriForum is coming from that perspective, and this probably would be one of the perspectives from which the legal battles would arise, that it appears to be a one-sided argument, and that AfriForum doesn't really enjoy that. So there's also the case in which it says that AfriForum is also not happy because of this BELA bill, because the current South African Schools Act clearly outlines actions that can be taken against schools that transgress in this way. That is, it says that new legislation is not necessary at all to crack down on discriminatory governing policies. It says that this raises the question on what is the reasons for clause 4 and 5 of the BELA bill. Okay. Anyway, that actually stems from an argument that says that strawman narratives are being used by ANC about schools allegedly using policies maliciously and for racist reasons to exclude learners. This was once again part of the remarks of Elek Nchabeleng, who was ANC MP and committee chairman, and this is the perspective of the ANC. The ANC actually comes from this notion that there are schools in South Africa now that actually use these language policies and admission policies maliciously to kind of like propagate racism and reasons to exclude learners from their schools. Okay, so this is where the ANC is arguing from, and that's why they think that the BELA Bill is necessary to sort of like begin stamping out the racism that still exists in South Africa from the perspective of language policies and admission policies in South Africa's public schools. Okay, so that's where this thing lies. And this Nchabelen's comments, according to AfriForum, they argue that Nchabelen's references to apartheid makes it very clear once again that the ANC is trying to push an agenda of retaliation against Afrikaans speakers and did not create the clauses 4 and 5 of the bill with a view to promote quality education. So this is the perspective from AfriForum, that it appears that the BELA Bill seems to be, they interpret the BELA Bill as a sort of like an agenda to retaliate against Afrikaans speakers, which is a perspective from the apartheid legacy in South Africa. So in a way, it's kind of like a retribution, so to speak, on Afrikaans speakers, as a way of getting back to the Afrikaans community for their role during apartheid. And instead of trying to push for quality education, they are interpreting this whole BELA Bill as a way of retaliating against Afrikaans speakers. And so this is what I'm beginning to really pick up from this whole debacle around the BELA Bill, and probably makes sense why it seems to be splitting hairs across the populace in South Africa. That why one group of South Africans are happy with the bill, the other group are really angry with the bill, and this might cause a clash in the courts. And we are waiting to see how it will end up. Probably maybe resulting in President Ramaphosa putting down this bill, or this bill taking into effect, and how it would have implications for Afrikaner community, especially with those who have their children studying in all exclusive, what they call single medium Afrikaans schools, having that now open to English learners, and then we have maybe Afrikaners children and also Black South Africans studying under English instruction. So these are multiple scenarios. There are scenarios that the public schools now might have Afrikaner education provided for Afrikaner children, and English tuition offered for maybe Black South Africans, all in the same school, and then having that. So it's a really, in a way, if that goes down that way, then we might be seeing the return of an apartheid separate development kind of like approach within the educational system, which I don't think would be advisable at this point to carry on. And so that's why this BELA Bill seems to be like a ticking time bomb, and we'll really be watching to see how the whole process goes down in court. But anyway, what do you guys think? Let's still think together. What do you think about the speech by this AfriForum chairperson here? Share your thoughts in the comments.